Welcome back to another episode of Trash Talk. I'm Jon-Bernard. This is Nick. We are the K-Roos brothers, giving you the news of what's happening around the world in combat sports. We're in Las Vegas. We're in a hotel gym in Las Vegas. We're ready for UFC 310. This will be the UFC 310 preview episode. It's going to be a big week. A lot of people are riding off the card. I think it's going to be exciting.
Well, people think just because there was the Bilal pullout and because it's the last card of the year, they're expecting fireworks, that it's going to not live up to expectations. But in my opinion, I think it's an underrated card. There's a lot of big fights happening this week. We're on the ground covering it live. We're going to be interviewing the fighters. We're going to be, trying to do some skits with the fighters. We'll see who we can get a hold of. But we'll see. It's going to be an exciting week.
Yeah, keep an eye out for it. We've got fighter interviews dropping on YouTube this week, so make sure you're subscribed. Let's get straight into it with our MMA hot take of the week. Everyone's been seeing the Conor McGregor news. So this week's MMA hot take, the UFC will not cut Conor McGregor.
The UFC, if they're smart, will not cut Conor McGregor because what's the worst that's going to happen? The news cycle's going to keep going on, and then people are going to forget Conor McGregor's going to make his return, and it's going to be massive. Any Conor McGregor fight card will be the biggest pay-per-view seller of all time and the biggest gate seller of all time. If you cut him, he's just going to do that at another promotion. Well, don't cut him.
The reason why we're bringing this up is there were reports that the UFC may cut Conor McGregor from the UFC roster, but I think they won't. Here's why. It's because he's a commercial goldmine, right? And the thing is, this is a civil case. It's not a criminal case. It's from 2018. He's appealing it in court. I think the UFC will be very hesitant to cut one of their biggest superstars when they're probably lacking a lot of superstars right now, knowing that Conor McGregor's return fight will be one of the biggest pay-per-view draws of all time. And what if he's found innocent, 2 years from now, a year from now, and they've made this wrong decision? He's already been dropped by the likes of Proper 12, a lot of his companies that he endorsed. So I don't think the UFC is going to jump the gun and cut him before anything else happens.
That's the thing, though. Because other companies have kind of set the precedent of what to do. They've dropped Conor McGregor. That maybe he's putting a bit of pressure on the UFC to make a decision, to maybe cut him from the roster. But he's just too valuable of an asset. I mean, I was surprised Proper 12, the company he actually kind of founded, cut him. I just thought that was a bit odd.
Is anyone going to drink Proper 12 if Conor McGregor's not the face of it
That's
anymore?
the thing. I'm like, I would only drink Proper 12 because it was Conor McGregor's whiskey. I have friends that have bought Proper 12 strictly because they're fans of Conor.
Who are you going to replace him with? Ian Gary? Like, who are you to replace Conor McGregor?
There's literally nobody. Whiskey is known as an Irish drink. Conor McGregor is the most famous Irishman of the 21st century. There's really no one to replace him with.
And as bad as it does look, it's obviously damaged his reputation massively, getting found guilty for assault in a civil court. But I just don't think the UFC want to cost themselves the opportunity of hosting Conor McGregor's return fight, which they have been slating. It was supposed to be last year. Now it's supposed to be looking like 2025. He's still saying he's going to be in the gym and he's focused on coming back. So I don't think the UFC are going to cut him. It's reported they might. I don't think it's going to happen.
If he does get cut, though, do you think the PFL would sign him immediately?
Well, you got to think, I do believe that bare knuckle also terminated his...
Yeah, so as I say, he can't go to bare knuckle because apparently they've distanced themselves from him. So even though he said he wanted a fight in that promotion, I think PFL's his only option.
Listen, I think he's good mates with Turkel Sheikh out in Saudi Arabia. I think it's easy to come back into a boxing match if he does get cut. But listen, I'm telling you right now, the UFC aren't going to cut him.
If they do, though, a boxing match actually does seem like the most likely thing because I think it makes more money for him personally. And then the PFL can maybe do do one boxing match, one PFL fight. We'll give you $500 million, whatever you like. It's a blank check for you, Conor. So it's not the worst thing if the UFC does cut him for him personally.
Best thing he can do right now is get in shape, win his appeal, and obviously try and make a comeback and get the fans back on your side. His reputation has taken a massive hit.
You know who I feel the most sorry for?
What?
No, Michael Chandler.
Oh, yeah.
The fight's never going to happen.
Nah, he's done. He's done. Yeah, better off facing Max Holloway, like you said.
I feel sorry for his wife, but Michael Chandler more. I feel sorry for him more.
Well, let's look around to news this week. Leon Edwards says he's eyeing a return at UFC London, which is a fight night later on this year. I want to see Leon Edwards back. It's like he fell off the face of the earth after he lost against Bilal Muhammad.
Well, the UFC Manchester card happened. He's the title holder. He hasn't lost a fight in over 8 years. He's on some massive win streak. Gets dominated by Bilal. And then all of a sudden, these UFC fans, the UFC rankings pound for pound, he's disappeared from everything. All fight news, all fight rumors. Leon Edwards is nowhere to be seen. Bilal was supposed to first time in December. Bilal pulls out. No one even mentions Leon's name as a potential Shavkat fight.
Yeah, I think Leon has only really surfaced in the last few weeks. He had one of his protein sponsors where he did come out and say his main goal right now is to be a two-time welterweight champion. And now he's saying he wants to headline UFC London, which makes sense. But who will be his opponent?
That's the thing, because the rumored fights right now, Ian Gary versus Shavkat's happening. Bilal, he's not going to verse Leon again for a title, especially not on a fight night. Kamaru Usman versus Jack Della. Usman's not going to verse Leon Edwards because
But
it'd
you'd
be
think
a
it'd
fourth
be
fight.
someone in the top 5 rankings.
Well, it has to be because
Okay, Jack Della.
he's still ranked number 1 in the welterweight division. So the only fight that does make sense is Jack Della, especially if Jack Della doesn't face Kamaru Usman in Australia.
You got Sean Brady, that could be a potential opponent. You could have the winner of Colby Covington and Joaquin Buckley.
That could make sense, but what a fall from grace, Colby Covington, Leon Edwards. Main eventing the December card last year to main eventing a fight night, it's a big drop-off.
Yeah, well, I mean, they also are getting up there in age, and there's new superstars coming through. You got Ian Gary, Jack Della. You got Shavkat, who I think is the next welterweight champion. But look, I want to see Leon Edwards back. If he is driven to get back into the mix of the welterweight championship, he was on the pads. He's looking sharp. He's looking good. You know, he did say he was carrying a back injury into that fight with Bilal Muhammad, so maybe he's rested, and we could see the best Leon Edwards.
Look, everyone can look good on the pads. Mike Tyson looked good on the pads. Ben Simmons looks good in warm-up sometimes when he's shooting threes. That doesn't mean anything. But Leon Edwards does have damaging power. You've seen the head kick to Kamaru Usman. But I want to float this idea. Say Ian Gary does lose this weekend to Shavkat. Could he main event that fight card in London? Leon Edwards versus Ian Gary. There's supposedly some previous, past history there
Same
where they
thing
got
with
kicked out of the
Shavkat,
gym.
Killcliff Gym. Yeah,
So,
same thing.
like Leon Edwards versus Ian Gary, that could be a potential fight card main event, which I think I would want to watch the most. That's a big, two big names for a fight card in London, and I think Leon Edwards does get the win there
But
as
it
well.
depends how dominated or not dominated Ian Gary gets this week in UFC 310. But let's talk about someone that wants to come out of retirement. He's pretty much slated to return in March or potentially at the UFC Miami card. Is Jorge Masvidal. George Masvidal says he wants to come back, but this means that UFC retirements are bullshit. Look at the amount of people that have retired and then come back. Henry Cejudo gave a retirement speech, come back. Jose Aldo, inducted into the Hall of Fame, comes back and fights. You've got Donald Cerrone, says he retires, goes on a TRT vacation, grows his hair out, says I want to come back to the UFC. Retirements don't mean shit in the UFC.
I think it's not just UFC, it's combat sports in general. Anytime a fighter does retire, there's always an itch for them to come back, and that's because the money's always there. I don't know if they're going to run out of money. I don't know what their financial situation is. But if you're getting offered a lot of money to come out of retirement, of course your retirement's going to mean nothing. And someone like Henry Cejudo, he's obviously made an embarrassment of himself because he did retire, come back and lose. And people are saying now he kind of has retired again. He's going to come out of retirement and probably lose again. I don't think that'll happen. But someone like Jorge Masvidal, he kind of did get the great finish that he wanted in Miami. He had a home crowd finish.
And he's been boxing. You know, he fought Nate Diaz. They moved that date a few times, but he has been somewhat active. He does want to favor that Miami crowd. But when you have someone like Dana White saying he'll never be back in the UFC.
It's very surprising.
And now he's reportedly signed and going to be at UFC Miami. Look, it's entertaining, but does that mean that the UFC roster is just failing to create superstars because you have to rely on these older guys, Nate Diaz, Nick Diaz, George Masvidal, to come back?
No, they don't. They're not relying upon them. It's just a nice addition. Like Jorge Masvidal to fight in Miami, it's just a nice addition to the card. It's like in WWE. It's nice to have an old legend return for a match. It doesn't mean they're replacing the current stars. It's just nice to have that, especially in Miami, where Masvidal is from. I know he's already had a fight there, but to get that final swan song retirement in Miami, it just adds to the card.
Who does he fight in Miami?
He could fight anyone. He could literally fight anybody. I think he's lightweight or welterweight. No, he's welterweight. He's welterweight. So he could fight anyone in the welterweight. Doesn't even have to be ranked. Just having a fight in Miami sells itself, adds to the card. If people in Miami want to see him fight, why would you not add to it? That's why Dana White, when he was so adamant that he's never going to fight in the UFC again, was that him just acting on emotions? Because if he does come out of retirement, Dana's going to eat his words again.
Yeah, I want to see him back. He's a superstar. Obviously got a massive social media following. He had a good shot against Nate Diaz in boxing. I want to see if he still has it in the octagon. I guess we'll wait and see in Miami. But let's talk to something that's happening at UFC 310, which is Aljamain Sterling. Has he been disrespected by not being on the main card?
This is one of the most surprising things of the week for me. From when they announced the 310 card and Aljamain Sterling versus Evelev was on the prelims, I was like, hey, what's going on here? Because Aljamain Sterling, a former bantamweight champion, one of the most successful bantamweight champions, the only bantamweight champion to have 3 successful defenses, versus another ranked fighter who's number 5, Evelev. How could this not be on the main card? It just doesn't make sense.
It's supposed to be a number 1 contender for the featherweight title. I mean, yes, you have Volkanovski next in line. You got Diego Lopez. But this is supposed to be like a contenders matchup for the featherweight champion. Aljo seems pretty disappointed. He said, look, the UFC have given him their reasoning for why he's not on the main card. He can be insulted by it, but he chooses to see it as a glass half full, wants to put on a big show on the prelims and kind of prove him wrong because he says he's a main card fighter.
He definitely is. If you've main evented a UFC card, whether it's sold pay-per-views or not, you deserve to be on the main card. The fact that he's on the prelims makes no sense. Okay, for UFC 300, he was on the prelims. That's because it was the most stacked card in UFC history. UFC 310 is not the most stacked card in UFC history.
And then the featherweight that's on the main card, you got Bryce Mitchell up against Gracie, who's returning to the UFC. It's like, I think Aljo has a bit more star power there and could have been a better addition on the main card. But regardless, I think he does want to prove himself, and I think he's kind of been offside with the UFC for some time now. It's like they keep kind of slapping him in the face.
Well, anytime a ranked fighter is on the prelims, it's going to raise eyebrows. When it's a former champion who's going after double champ status, if he does win this, you're right, he does go into the next fight could be for a champion or another number one contenders. He's going to be facing people in the top 5. So for him not to be on the pay-per-view card, I think they're definitely disrespecting him, whether it's Dana or Hunter that dislikes him. You saw the footage of the Fight documentary where he's kind of had his manager and Aljo, they were kind of disrespected a bit. They were kind of calling him a pussy. I don't know if it was what they kind of meant, but the fact that Aljo continually gets disrespected, it's not a good thing. And he's got to put on a good showing, whether it be a knockout or submission, to really kind of impress them.
Well, it's more fuel for him going into this fight against Evelev. It's going to be a tough matchup for him, but he's pretty much saying that he's going to go out there and put on an absolute show. Definitely try and get a finish. So I guess we'll see where Aljo ends up. He's been training with Merab. He looks good. He looks good at featherweight. I think that's going to be his. Well, he wants that second champ. He's going to be going after it. I think this is where he stays.
Well, if he does beat Evelev, which I do think he wins this weekend, he either does fight Volkanovski or Diego Lopez, more likely Diego Lopez, wins that fight, you're versing the winner of Volk Taporia.
An Aljo Volk fight could be very interesting. I'd love to see that.
Two former legends, older, getting up there in their career. And Aljo is an underrated fighter. I know people think he's boring because he just wrestles people, gets decisions, but that's the UFC. You're allowed to do that. He did that at UFC 300, won his featherweight, won his return to the featherweight division. So, Aljo, prove yourself and prove everyone wrong.
Kamaru Usman has come out recently and said he's sick of fans saying that he is scared of Shavkat Rakhmonov. This is on top of Ian Gary coming out and saying he's got a big chest and little balls because he refused to take a fight against Ian Gary. This is what Ian Gary has said. And Ian Gary has said this about multiple fighters. Anyone really in the top 5 that refused to fight him, when you're talking about Usman, Colby Covington, who's said to have ducked him, and anyone in that top 5. But is Kamaru Usman ducking and wanting favourable fights in his division at this stage in his career?
Well, I think we asked the question a couple of weeks back when we were previewing who could replace Bilal. And I did say, Kamaru Usman is ducking Shavkat. We've seen the fighting documentary footage where Khabib was saying, hey, Kamaru, you should be fighting Shavkat because it's like you got to pass the torch.
And you can prove yourself as a legend of the sport.
If you win, that puts you straight back into the title picture. But now this is the second time where he said, I don't want to fight Shavkat because I don't want to take it on short notice. And while I do agree with some of the points Kamaru Usman is making, because if you're a former champion getting up there in age, you don't need to take a dangerous fight on short notice, even though he did do that against Hamza.
And he told us that, actually, personally. He said, why do I need to put myself in precarious positions and having to come back early like I did against Hamza? And, he's proven that he doesn't need to do that. Why can't he just get his body right, heal up, and take a fight that it's a bit more favorable to him and allow him to build momentum into trying to reclaim the belt? I'm with Kamaru Usman on this. I think he should wait. And that Jack Della fight that he seems to be eyeing, that Ian Gary says that he will 100% take, is definitely a better matchup for him. He's probably seen how, easily Gilbert Burns took down JDM and says, I would rather have this matchup in my comeback fight and get that win. He's coming off 3 losses. He needs a win. So why would you want to take the most dangerous guy in the division?
And that's where his quote from his podcast said, I'm a former world champion. Yeah, I'm ducking him. Yeah, shut up. Okay, all these fans that are saying that, me included, he's obviously having a go at. But the fact that he's having to defend himself time and time again, you not find that a bit like you're trying to I kind of feel like that shows that you are scared. The fact that you keep bringing it up.
It's the exact same as the John Jones situation. He's proven himself in that division. He's proven himself as one of the greats, the welterweight GOAT. Why does he need to continually, I got to face this guy to continually prove myself? No. At that stage in his career, coming off 3 losses, he needs to get a win, get the feel back in into the octagon, and I want to see him face a JDM, win, gain momentum, and then challenge for a title. Whether that's having to face Shavkat, whether that's facing Bilal. I think that he's trying to think, what's my best path to reclaiming the title? And it's just not facing Shavkat on short notice, so I don't blame him.
And where I think Kamaru Usman is correct is I think he's the most underrated fighter in the UFC right now. You got to understand, he lost to Khamzat by a 3-round decision. People many think that he actually could have won that fight. If it went to 5 rounds, they said, yeah, he definitely would have won that fight. Then the 2 previous losses to that, lucky head kick by Leon Edwards, and the second one, a very close decision loss. So really, he hasn't lost much stock. It's only because the win-loss record shows he's lost 3 in a row. But if he does versus JDM, which I think he would win in a very dominating fashion.
I'd put $10,000 on him.
Exactly. I'd be very confident in a Kamaru Usman win. And then he versus Bilal or Shavkat for the title. I think he wins that as well. So he's playing it smart. He knows the cards that he has, and he'll just play them as they go along.
Well, we want to see him back. And if you're Kamaru Usman right now, are you taking Shavkat on 3 weeks' notice?
No.
Really? Do you need to?
I'm very surprised Ian Gary has done so. So if Kamaru Usman
Ian
was
Gary's reasoning makes sense, is because he doesn't want to face Joaquin Buckley trying to defend his ranking. He wants to progress up the rankings, and this is his opportunity to do so, and he took it. Kamaru Usman doesn't need to do that, especially coming off 3 losses. Why do fans want to say, oh, how come you didn't take this fight on 3 weeks' notice? Oh, if he was given a fight camp and he refused to take it, okay, you could make an exception. But always asking to continually take stuff on short notice when he doesn't need to, when he's proven himself, I'm with Kamaru Usman on this one.
Okay, but the realistic possibility, he hasn't fought since last October. Going through the rankings, who are you likely going to face? He's had a year off, basically, more than a year off. The only opponents that he could have faced in that division were Shavkat or JDM. And if
Ian
JDM...
Gary.
But no, he was never fighting Ian Gary. Ian Gary was way too low in the rankings.
Well, he's 6th now.
Okay, but I'm saying but this whole year, his only likely opponents were Shavkat or JDM. JDM's been injured. So really, if he's been staying in shape and training, he should have been training for Shavkat anyway. So the fact that, I was only given 3 weeks, really, you've had the whole year to kind of prepare for him. But Kamaru Usman, you're a former champion, one of the greatest. You can do whatever you like.
Let's move over to Jamahal Hill. He's been going on Twitter back and forth with Yuri Prohaska and Alex Pereira. Is Jamahal Hill the most delusional fighter in the UFC?
At the moment, yes, just because the memes, just the stuff that he says.
Well, this is what he said.
It's too much. Jamal, you're doing too much.
Yuri got dominated and I got caught. That's the difference between him and Yuri when he's talking about fighting Alex Pereira. Alex Pereira sees them going back and forth and says, calm down, my sons. Impress daddy and you'll be given a second chance. So Alex Pereira's having fun with both of them. And Jamahal Hill doesn't want to take it. Obviously can't take the banter.
Look, Jamahal Hill, yes, you may have gotten caught and Yuri got dominated in the first round and obviously the start of the second round against his fight against Alex Pereira. But the end result was you both got knocked out. So what's the difference? Yeah. Alex Pereira knocked you both out. There's no difference. Jamahal Hill, you can make all the excuses, or he progressed forward as he waved the ref off.
That's what I mean. Jamahal Hill says you waited for the ref to get involved and then you caught me. You know the fear that you have and I'll see you soon. Well, I just don't think Alex Pereira fears Jamahal Hill as much as he thinks he does. He's knocked out. He's already knocked him out. Once you kind of get a knockout over a fighter, I think it sticks with you. Yes, there's time for a rematch and there were circumstances with that knockout. But Alex Pereira, I think at this point, at 37 years old, is looking for legacy fights. You know, he's definitely eyeing the John Jones fight. He's campaigned for that a couple of times on his Instagram. I think he will give a rematch to Jamahal Hill. I don't think I'm that much interested in seeing a Yuri Prohaska rematch.
No, definitely. Yuri's got a long way back before he goes for the title. But if Jamahal Hill does win this fight, he does get the rematch, strictly because he is a former champion and he was coming off a pretty serious injury, which many thought he returned early for the main event UFC 300. So Jamahal Hill, if I was going to be making excuses, I'd focus more on the injury. Stop talking about, I just got caught, or the ref. Just say, look, I wasn't 100% yet. I obviously got paid to main event 300 on short notice because of all the pullouts and all the promises Dana had made. But Jamahal Hill, if you're going to keep running your mouth, people are going to keep making fun of you because you got no leg to stand on. You got knocked out. That's it.
We spoke about it last week. John Jones backs Jamahal Hill against Yuri Prohaska in this rematch at UFC 311. But again, the antics online from Jamahal Hill, the yawn. You know, they're constantly going back and forth on Twitter claiming people are scared of you when the guy's already knocked you out. But regardless, he has the right to talk his shit, but it just comes across to UFC fans as delusional because, you know, you just need to get in there and prove yourself and not really talk the talk. I'm going to go in there and knock him out. You know, you were saying that about Alex Pereira and then you got caught. So things can happen. He needs to start putting wins on the board before he keeps talking shit.
Which I do think that's why January can't come sooner for him. He's very exciting. He's obviously someone that can knock people out. He's shown it before. And if he does it to Yuri Prohaska in January in LA, then he's just straight back. That's it. You just need that one win to reboost your stock. And someone like Alex Pereira, maybe he's scared of him because strikers will obviously have that one punch power. I think he's more scared of Ankalaev. I don't know. Maybe he's ducking him. I don't know.
He's called him a bitch on Twitter as well.
They're going back
really
and forth.
Shut up.
Ankalaev, but the Ankalaev Pereira fight will happen, and then the winner will get Jamahal Hill if he beats Yuri Prohaska.
Well, let's take a look at UFC 310 this week. I want the fans to really understand who is Kai Asakura. He's a Japanese sensation that has pretty much been one of the most hyped fighters in Japan over the last 15 years. Former Ryzen bantamweight champion.
2-time.
Had to relinquish his title to fight in the UFC. It was an emotional goodbye to Ryzen. This guy is a Japanese superstar. He's pretty much in the mainstream in Japan. Over 560,000 followers on Instagram. Nick, do you think he deserved a title shot in his first fight in the UFC?
No, I don't. Strictly because it's very hard to tell other UFC fighters who have been in the promotion for so long that all the work you've done doesn't deserve a title shot. And for one fighter in particular, I'm saying Kai Kara France because he did have a very good, convincing win over a former title contender, Steve Erceg. Firstly, how did Steve Erceg get a title shot over him? I understand that Pantoja has beat Kai Kara France before, but Kai Kara France is a different fighter since then. And then for someone to come in from Japan, just leapfrog the likes of Brandon Royval, Brandon Moreno, and Kai Kara France, it's very rude to your current crop of fighters. That's my only problem. I'm not saying on his ability, on what he's done or what he's achieved overseas doesn't warrant a title shot here.
Yeah.
It's just you got to have a few fights in the UFC before you go for a title.
I think his star power has afforded him the opportunity to get a title shot in his first fight in the UFC. When you look at his backstory, him and his brother are like the Nate Diaz, the Diaz brothers of Japan. They started the street fight origins. They have a great hype behind them in Japan. I mean, if you look at his record as well, he's got unbelievable striking power, known as a TKO artist, loves to get in wild exchanges. He has lost to the likes of Manel Cape and some other former greats in Ryzen as well. But, I mean, if you look at it, crazy striking ability. Blasted Kyoji Hiraguchi, who fought in the UFC as well by TKO, one of the most surprising knockouts in Ryzen. Like I said, huge superstar in Japan. And like I said, I think the UFC are definitely looking at capitalizing on that Japanese market. So if you have a guy like Kai Asakura who wins the title in a division that's lacking star power, let's be honest, these fights don't sell, these flyweight fights. He's a bantamweight fighter, cutting weight to flyweight. I think if he gets it done, the UFC want to capitalize on having a UFC fight night in Japan. Whether it's a fight night or a UFC pay-per-view, they know they can capitalize on that Japanese market who love combat sports.
And where I had to eat my words was the announcement that Kai Asakura was fighting the UFC did, I think, 1 million or a lot of views on YouTube. So he does have star power.
Plus,
Access to that Japanese audience does warrant him a title shot. It's just disrespect to current fighters. But hey, be a bigger star. That's, UFC, as much as it's about earning your title shot, you do have to sell fights. You have to sell pay-per-views. And that's where Kai Asakura has come in and will be the big shot for this pay-per-view. He's going to touch that Japanese audience, going to get more people to watch the UFC from there. He's got a big Ryzen following. Try and transition that following to UFC.
it's going to be an exciting fight nonetheless. I think he's a lot bigger than Pantoja, and I guess we'll get into the preview. I don't know what's going to happen. Again, flyweight, a lot of the time, it's either a crazy knockout. I don't think Pantoja's going to be able to get the finish like he has done before, but I guess we'll wait and see.
But that takes us to our UFC 310 official preview in Las Vegas. Surprisingly, though, there is no female fights on this card.
No female fights. What are we in Abu Dhabi?
I had to double check. I was scrolling. I was like, really? I think only Abu Dhabi I've ever seen this. No female fights on the card. First time in a long time. But the first fight on the card, we'll go to the prelims. Aljamain Sterling versus Movsar Evelev. Who do you have winning and why?
Look, I've got Aljo winning, and I know he's come out very dramatically saying that he wants to get a finish and wants to prove to the UFC that he wants to be on the main card, but I think he gets it done by decision. Evelev, great grappler, has shown he's elite in the featherweight division, and Aljo, for all the things that he's done in the bantamweight division, I think it's just going to be a bit tougher than he's expecting. He's been training with the likes of Merab and whatnot, and he looks sharp on the pads, and I'm sure his wrestling is absolutely second to none. I just think he's going to find it a tougher time than he's expecting, and he's not going to be a one-sided, dominated, I don't think he's going to dominate Movsar Evloev. So I'm going to take Aljamain Sterling by decision, and I think he gets it done, proving to the UFC should be on the main card.
See, this is an extremely tough fight to pick because Aljo, former champion, coming up in weight to featherweight. But Movsar Evloev is touted as one of the future fighters of this division. Obviously not Dagestani. I think he's from a state next to Chechnya, but he's from that region, elite wrestling. So he could just easily dominate this fight, even though Aljo is himself someone that does like to take people to the ground, dominate the fight. But because it's 3 rounds, it's extremely hard to pick. Aljamain Sterling says he has a point to prove, obviously being on the prelims, wants to do something special, get the win in fantastic fashion. But I just don't see that happening. If I'm going to bet smart, I'll just put this fight to go the distance. 3 rounds, it's easily going to go the distance. And I'm leaning more towards Aljamain just because he has a point to prove. But I wouldn't be surprised if Evloev wins this fight.
Yeah, I was going to say TKO or submission, but I just think it's Aljo by decision here. And I wouldn't sleep on Movsar Evloev either. But I think it goes the distance for sure. Next fight, we have Reyes versus Anthony Smith.
2 former John Jones championship opponents. Dominic Reyes, someone who people did think beat John Jones, versus Anthony Smith, who's just been a career light heavyweight, somehow still going. I just really want Dominic Reyes to win. I know he's been on a bit of a losing streak, finally got that win back in his last fight. But he's someone that is a classy fighter, has the knockout power, and a great finish rate in the UFC. And in this fight, I just want to see Dominic Reyes win. I think the smart bet would be to just take him head-to-head because it's only 3 rounds. But with his finish rate, if you want to, I'm saying if you want to make some money, just take him by knockout. I feel like he's got the power to do it, and he wants to prove a point as well. He's on the comeback. Dominic Reyes by knockout.
I can't get behind Anthony Smith. I like his analysis of fights when he's on ESPN, as a fighter that's in there. I just haven't seen anything from him in his last few fights to say he's going to get it done against Dominic Reyes. I'm going to take it easy and go Reyes just to win head-to-head, not by decision, not by TKO, not by submission. I'm just going to take him head-to-head to win. I just think he gets it done. He's the better fighter and probably the better contender in the division, more driven, so I'm taking Reyes.
And Anthony Smith, he's kind of been known as the gatekeeper now to the light heavyweight division. Like, to get into the rankings, you got to beat Anthony Smith. And somehow he's still going. Credit to him. He's like, just collecting paychecks, earning money. He's going to probably be finishing up soon. That's why you got to lean more towards Dominic Reyes. But next fight on the card, on the main card, the heavyweight bout, Cyril Gane versus Alexander Volkov 2. They fought before previously in 2021. Cyril Gane got the decision victory. But how do you see this fight going this weekend?
This fight's kind of flown under the radar on this card and is what is actually getting me excited for this card. With Jon Jones and Aspinall and that talk of holding up the division, everyone's been kind of sleeping on Cyril Gane and Volkov. This fight did get moved from the Abu Dhabi card to UFC 310. And look, I can't look past Cyril Gane. He's got a point to prove after that horrific showing against Jon Jones. He came out recently and said, look, that wasn't me. I wasn't myself. To having 2 losses from Francis Ngannou and Jon Jones, I think they're pretty handy losses on your resume. I think he's just more athletic, more versatile than Alexander Volkov, who has proven himself on his resume more recently as well, and he has a point to prove. But I'm just going to go with Cyril Gane to get the job done here. I think it's Cyril Gane by TKO, and I can't look past Cyril Gane here on his way to wanting to face Tom Aspinall.
I know Volkov did beat Sergey Pavlovich and looked pretty convincing in that. He's beaten Tai Tuivasa pretty convincingly as well. But Cyril Gane is known as the future of the heavyweights. Very, very mobile, very, very slimmed down, a lot of power, still has the heavyweight power. And you're right. The only losses on Cyril Gane's resume are Francis Ngannou and Jon Jones, 2 of the best fighters in the last 5 years in the heavyweight division. So Cyril Gane should win this fight. He's already beaten Alexander Volkov previously as well. But what I want to point out is Cyril Gane on Ariel Helwani's podcast, he's gone at Tom Aspinall, firstly oddly saying that Tom Aspinall would find it easier to beat Jon Jones than he would find to beat Alex Pereira, which I find baffling to hear. But Cyril Gane also saying that Tom Aspinall was the one ducking him. I don't know how that makes sense because he said they had a fight scheduled in March of this year, but Tom Aspinall didn't accept. Where I've heard from Tom Aspinall that Cyril Gane's the one ducking him. So who do you believe? Everyone's just alleging everyone's ducking each other.
And that's happening in every single division, whether it's the welterweight division, Colby Covington and Ian Gary saying they're ducking each other. Look, we don't get to hear what happens behind the scenes. We don't hear it directly from the UFC. But I don't think Tom Aspinall wants to defend the interim title. And that could be a definite factor if Tom Aspinall did say no. But regardless, I did hear rumors that Cyril Gane was offered Tom Aspinall for UFC 310. No,
For 310 as
for
well.
310 to headline UFC 310 when everything was up in arms and Bilal dropped out. And whether it's Tom Aspinall not wanting to defend the interim title or Cyril Gane saying, no, I don't want to fight Tom Aspinall, I don't know what it is. Tom Aspinall is adamant. Cyril Gane has consistently said no to fighting Tom Aspinall, which would make him the first fighter in the heavyweight division to be ducking Tom Aspinall. But look, regardless, Cyril Gane has a point to prove. He needs to get back into the win column in the heavyweight division. And I think this is the fight to do it. He's more versatile. I think he's just more of the athletic heavyweight. Can beat Volkov with a bit more in this fight. So I'm going Cyril Gane to win.
Yeah, and especially if it's a 3-round fight, I'm probably going to go Gane by decision. I think Volkov can hold him off. It was a decision last time. I expect it to be a decision again. Gane by decision is the smart bet here.
Let's go to the highlight fight for us. Shavkat Rakhmonov versus Ian Gary. Nick, who you got?
I've got Shavkat here pretty easily. I think he's going to dominate him. If the fight does go to the ground, it's game over for Ian Gary. I know people like Michael Bisping have said the same thing. As soon as it goes to the ground, that's all over Red Rover for Ian Gary. But Shavkat, he does get caught sometimes. So Ian Gary maybe does have some chance here if he can catch him early with some strikes. But I do think that 18 for 18 will become 19 for 19. I expect Shavkat to get the finish, and I guess he'll get it done pretty easy.
Everyone is talking about this sparring footage.
Exactly, that plays a massive
That
part.
plays a massive part into this fight. Allegedly, Shavkat has knocked out Ian Gary in sparring, or something had happened in training.
He's just beaten him. He's
And
dominated
beaten
him.
He was seen as the kind of mentor in the gym, I think, or Ian's mentor, with Ian being the younger opponent. And look, Ian Gary is coming in very confident. He wants to take Shavkat 0. 18 fights, 18 finishes. It's pretty unbelievable in this day and age in the UFC. Shavkat is the boogeyman of the division. Look, it's a 5-round fight. Anything can happen, but I'm with you. I think Shavkat gets it done. I don't think he finishes him. If Ian Gary fights in a similar fashion the way he fought MVP, which is a spoiling fight, trying to pick him apart, keeping his distance, trying to spoil it and wrestle, I think he keeps his distance from Shavkat, avoids being taken down, and I think Shavkat is being the aggressor in this fight, and it just goes to decision. Shavkat does enough with significant strikes, and Shavkat wins by decision. That's my prediction.
People like Chael Sonnen have pointed out that sparring footage and the fact that Ian Gary has taken this fight so confidently that maybe he knows something that we don't. Obviously, he's not going to share it. But I understand Ian Gary was much younger when this sparring footage was released or when they were sparring and Shavkat dominated him. But not really. What more can you improve on? Especially because, like, Chael Sonnen can say, yes, since then, Ian Gary has worked on his wrestling, he's worked on his striking, he's become a better fighter. Equally, Shavkat has probably done the same. He's become a much better fighter. He's dominated people in his division and has earned a title shot. Ian Gary hasn't earned a title shot yet. That's where I think Shavkat is just a much more experienced, much better fighter. And I expect that to show on the weekend. He'll dominate him and get the victory.
And listen, we're not the only ones that think Shavkat is going to dominate. There's a lot of UFC fighters that dislike Ian Gary, that want to see him get knocked out. But you have to respect Ian Gary for taking this fight on short notice and wanting to progress up the rankings and get the #1 contender spot in the welterweight division. I got to respect it. As much as you can call him a cuck and you can go at his wife for writing a How to Be a Wag book, he's taken the scariest fight in the welterweight division on short notice. And look, I'm not going to say I want to see him get it done. I want it to be an entertaining fight, but I think Shavkat wins. A lot of people have Shavkat by TKO submission. I'm taking Shavkat by decision in a very spoiling fight.
Okay, now that takes us to our main event. What should possibly be the co-main was originally the co-main, but it is the main event of UFC 310 in Las Vegas. Alexandra Pantoja versus Kai Asakura for the flyweight championship. Who do you have winning?
Look, I like Kai Asakura. I've bought into the hype. I think he's entertaining. I want to see a UFC event in Japan. The guy, he's the much bigger fighter. He definitely has the reach. He's a wild striker, loves to get in those crazy exchanges. I don't think Pantoja is going to be able to do what he's done to other opponents and take him to the ground as easily. But I just think with experience, on the big stage in the UFC at T-Mobile Arena, I'm taking Pantoja to win. It's just the experience. This guy has dominated the division for the last however many years. I think he's going to end the year as the flyweight champion, and I think he's going to eye going up to the bantamweight division and maybe going up against a Marab or whoever is the champion in that division. So I'm taking Pantoja with Kai Asakura having a great showing.
Pantoja is one of the most disrespected fighters in the UFC. Looking at the stats, He's 9-0 against the current flyweight top 10. That means he has cleared through his division. He has done a great job in fighting the top fighters in his division and winning. On top of that, he's outside the top 10 in the UFC pound for pound ranking. Someone that's won the title and won it that convincingly against the top people in his division should be much higher in the pound for pound rankings. And that's for another reason why I think he's getting disrespected with people thinking Kai Asakura can win. Kai Asakura hasn't fought in an octagon. In Ryzen, they fight in a ring. Okay, there's no cage. This is something that's going to be foreign to Kai Asakura. I think he needed a warm-up fight before going for the title. And that's where, again, you said the experience will take over. Pantoja should win. I take it by decision. And Pantoja should win by decision.
I will say that Steve Erceg did give Pantoja a lot of trouble with his striking. Those, close-range elbows. And Steve Erceg being the taller opponent, you could say he struggled with a similar opponent before. So I wouldn't count out Kai Asakura to maybe catch him with one of those crazy strikes. I mean, you've seen what he's done in Ryzen. Broken jaws, TKOs. He's an exciting, entertaining fighter. All it will take is one clean shot with his power. So but Pantoja's shown his ability, like he did with Erceg, to eat some of those shots. And if Erceg kept the pressure on in that last round, he could have definitely been the flyweight champion. So I guess we'll wait and see. Don't count out Kai Asakura, but I'm taking Pantoja.
Look, Kai Asakura has said it only takes one shot. You've seen what he can do is x-rays of people with broken jaws. Kai Asakura does have the power, but I think because Pantoja knows he can get caught like that, he'll play it smart, keep his distance, try and take him down, play the ground game as he's done against other strikers. And that's where I think, look, it's a flyweight fight. Anything can happen. It's more likely or not the smart bet just to take it to go the distance. People at this weight, they don't have the power to knock each other out. So I'll take it to go the distance, but I'm leaning more towards Pantoja's decision.
Okay, that's a wrap-up of our UFC 310 preview. Let's quickly go into our UFC multis. Nick, starting with your multi, what do you like?
I got Dominic Reyes head-to-head. I think he's too good for Anthony Smith. He's going to get back onto a win streak. Dominic Reyes head-to-head. I'll take that with Everlev versus Sterling to go the distance. I know I'm leaning more towards Aljamain, but just for this fight, I'm going to take them to both go the distance. That into Cyril Gane head-to-head. I can't go confidently decision or TKO. It's a heavyweight fight. I'm just going to take Cyril Gane head-to-head. I'm going to take Shavkat by KO or submission. I think he gets the finish. 19 for 19 incoming. That into Pantoja by decision. I think that's the smart bet. All up multi, it's a pretty good bet. Bet responsibly.
Yeah, gamble responsibly. But you can't forget to neglect that. My one's pretty similar. I think this card is there's not going to be too many crazy finishes. There'll be a lot of decision victories. So starting with Aljamain Sterling, I'm taking him to win by decision. Okay. Then I've got Dominic Reyes to win head-to-head. Cyril Gane to win by decision. The French people need a victory. Okay. Benoit Saint-Denis has gone down. Moicano ruined him. The French people need someone, and they need to, Cyril Gane needs to redeem himself. So I'm going Cyril Gane head-to-head. This is where the big money is. Shavkat Rakhmonov to win by decision in a 5-round fight. Some bookmakers have it at $7 right now. I'm taking Shavkat to win by decision. And then I'll take Alexandre Pantoja to win head-to-head. I'm not going to take it by decision or a TKO. I think Pantoja to win by any means necessary.
Hey, that's a good bet as well. I think we're kind of pretty much similar, just a few different win by decision, go the distance. But I think both those bets should get up on the weekend.
Now, we did cover WWE Survivor Series War Games in Vancouver, Canada. I want to give a quick wrap-up of that. I think it was a very entertaining event. The War Games as a match with the women's doing it and then the men's headlining at the end of the night, I think it's kind of being overdone. I'd like to see a return back to the 5-on-5 elimination Survivor Series type matches.
That's what the internet kind of put forward as well. They've said, look, War Games has been done too many times now. I like the original SmackDown versus Raw 5v5. Let the roster have superiority, have the champions versus each other. I think they're going to return to that next year with the internet backlash, but War Games, for the period that it has been very entertaining, and on the weekend was a great match.
I thought, the storyline with Paul Heyman getting in there with CM Punk and Roman Reigns, them not being on the same page was excellent. It had a great kind of aspect that we didn't think that the new bloodline was going to have. Very entertaining. As an event was great. We got to ask questions to Rhea Ripley in the post-match press conference. Bron Breakker, we saw the boss man, Triple H backstage. It was great. But this is what I want to ask you about WWE right now. Is Cody Rhodes being disrespected as WWE champion? For a WWE champion to not be on Survivor Series, headlining Survivor Series. I know they're waiting for him to kind of main event this Saturday night main event card on Peacock. But is he being disrespected as WWE champion?
He's being disrespected in the sense that he's not the top guy. Roman Reigns is the top guy. And the last 3 pay-per-views, last 4 pay-per-views, literally since Roman Reigns has returned, he's dominated the pay-per-view, the main event of that pay-per-view. Whether it be Crown Jewel versus Solo, whether it be, I think, was it SummerSlam or no, he returned at SummerSlam, but one of the events after that, I think it was the one in Atlanta, where it was a tag team matchup. So Cody Rhodes is being overshadowed by the Bloodline, OTC, and that's where I think he's getting a bit disrespected. Yeah. And I think everyone kind of wants him to turn heel. They want him to be Homelander.
The Bloodline is the hottest, storyline in wrestling right now. It's impacting about 3 different storylines. It's impacting Cody Rhodes' storyline. It's impacting the Bloodline versus the new Bloodline, the OTC Bloodline versus Solo, Roman versus Solo. Jey Uso, it's the Seth Rollins storyline. Bronson Reed's now involved. It is the most influential probably story in the last, however many, 5 years it's been since we've seen, Roman Reigns be the tribal chief. But I will say there were rumors online that the reason why Cody Rhodes wasn't on Survivor Series is because Kevin Owens would have been seen as a babyface in Canada and got a very positive reception, which wouldn't be a good look for Cody Rhodes being the babyface champion.
Yeah, but that could make sense. That's not the first time that's happened where a face has been the heel. They just play the crowd. It's nothing bad, nothing wrong with it.
I do still think Cody Rhodes is a fan favorite. He is the face of WWE as, the babyface champion. We just need to see more of him. And I think it's just going to heat up going into the road to WrestleMania as The Rock starts to enter, as his feud with Roman Reigns starts to, as it could pick up over time. So I don't think he's being disrespected. I just think, he's just not the hottest guy in WWE right now.
My only takeaway from Survivor Series is, what's the favor? CM Punk, Paul Heyman, what's the favor? You've teased it. Let me know what the favor is. I want to know.
I think we'll find out about Royal Rumble time, whether CM Punk wants to be injected into a WrestleMania main event, or he wants a favor that involves being, facing Roman Reigns for a champion. Well, I think he wants to headline WrestleMania.
Raw is on today, and from what I saw, CM Punk is opening Raw, so maybe we'll find out on this next episode of Raw.
Yeah, I guess we'll wait and see. But that is all we have time for on Trash Talk today. Thank you for watching. We'll have the timestamps in the description. Make sure you subscribe to @KRuzBros on YouTube and keep an eye out for the clips at Jon-Bernard K on Instagram and TikTok. Thank you for your time. Thank you for watching. Back to you in the studio, Ryan.